Imagine holding your phone and scrolling through your camera roll. You stop at a photo from a beach trip you could swear happened maybe 2 or 3 years ago. But then, you look at the tiny timestamp on the screen 7 years ago. 7 years. You pause, staring closely at your own face in the picture. A different job, a different apartment. An old phone model that has been gone for ages. 7 actual years have passed in your life. But somehow in your memory, that massive stretch of time doesn't take up much more space than a few months. You begin to realize a terrifying truth. When you were 10 years old, a single summer seemed to stretch on forever, filled with endless days that had no finish line. But by the time you hit 40, an entire year can shrink down, flashing by so fast that all you are left with is a few birthdays, a short vacation, and the constant question, didn't that just happen last month? The clock on the wall has never ticked any faster. Every year still has exactly 365 days, and every day still has 24 hours. So what exactly sped up? Is our aging brain changing how we perceive time? Or is our life simply starting to leave fewer markers behind? To answer this, we have to recognize a fundamental difference between two timekeeping systems. A physical clock operates on absolute stable repetition. One swing, one tick, 1 second, followed by another second that is identical to the last. But your brain does not operate like a clock. It does not record every second of your life with the same resolution. When documenting reality, the brain is intensely biased toward novelty, unexpected events shifting goals, and the exact moments when one thing ends and another begins. Because of this, 2 days that are both 24 hours long can leave behind a completely different amount of memory material. Your first day moving to a brand new city might be packed with dozens of vivid, high-definition mental scenes. But a familiar workday at the same office 5 years later might be lazily compressed by your brain into a single tiny footnote, just another normal day. A clock measures how much time has passed. Your brain measures how many distinct changes happened within that time. But when we say time flies, which type of time are we actually talking about? Cognitive science splits this experience into 2 completely different questions. Question number 1. Is time passing fast or slow right now? This is experience time. When you are sitting at a gate, waiting for a flight that is delayed by 3 hours, every minute crawls by like torture. But when you are lost in an amazing conversation, 3 hours can vanish in the blink of an eye. Question number 2. How long does that period feel when you look back on it? This is remembered time, and this is where the magic of memory happens. A chaotic, jam-packed vacation might fly by while you are living it. But months later, when you look back, that trip feels incredibly long and full of life. Conversely, a repetitive week of boring routines will make you agonizingly count down every single afternoon. But a few months later, that entire week is almost completely erased from your memory. The feeling that life is accelerating isn't caused by an internal biological clock running too fast. It is a direct result of how your memory compresses long stretches of time. This feeling isn't just a quirky psychological illusion. It taps into our deepest adult anxieties. Why does childhood feel so vast and expansive, while adulthood shrinks down? Why does an entire decade sometimes leave behind only a few flickering highlights? Are we living too fast, or are we living each day fully, but forgetting to bind them into separate chapters? If a whole year disappears without a trace in our memory, it is dangerously easy to feel an empty sense of loss. Even if throughout that year we worked hard, cared for our families, ate dinner, worried, and completed thousands of tiny tasks. What truly terrifies us isn't that time has passed. What terrifies us is the feeling that life has happened, without leaving enough of a trace. So what evidence has science found to decode this acceleration? Evidence number 1. The age effect is real, but it is not an absolute law. Large studies involving hundreds of people from age 14 to 94 have confirmed a trend. Older adults generally report that time seems to pass more quickly. However, the actual impact of age is relatively small, explaining at most about 10% of the variance in how people perceive time. That means getting older doesn't automatically fast-forward the hands of the clock inside your head. Two 60-year-olds can experience a year very differently. If one just moved to a new house, started learning a new skill, and is busy taking care of a new grandchild, their year will be flooded with memorable milestones. But if the other person lives through 12 identical months of unbroken routine, their year will be ruthlessly compressed. Age only alters the living conditions that the brain uses to reconstruct time. Evidence number 2. The time we live and the time we remember often move in opposite directions. When you actively pay attention to time passing, like when you are waiting bored or in pain, time in that moment crawls. But ironically, because that boring wait contained 0 memorable events, your brain doesn't bother recording it, which compresses that time into a tiny dot when you look back. On the flip side, when you are immersed in new experiences, you forget to check the clock, so time seems to fly by. But because your brain is actively capturing a massive density of new images, emotions, and information, the memory log becomes incredibly thick. So in retrospect, that exact same period stretches out and feels much longer. Boredom can stretch the hour, but erase the day. Novelty can shorten the hour, but expand your memory. Evidence number 3. Our brains constantly cut our lives into small events. We don't store life as one continuous unbroken video recording from morning to night. Instead, the brain automatically builds models of what is happening. I am cooking. I am driving to work. I am talking on the phone. Whenever something changes, whether it is a goal, a location, or a new person entering the room, the brain updates its model and inserts an event boundary. These invisible cuts help structure our memories into distinct movie scenes. Fascinatingly, an fMRI brain scanning study published in 2025 on nearly 600 people found that as we age, our neural activity states tend to last longer. This means an older brain seems to create fewer distinct states when processing the same amount of new information. While this doesn't prove direct causation, it points to a highly logical mechanism. You don't feel a year is shorter because it has fewer days. You feel it is shorter because your brain has placed fewer event cuts onto the film reel of your memory. Evidence number 4. The problem lies in our ability to encode novelty. A study published in April 2026, surveying people of various ages, revealed a surprising truth. Even though older adults felt the past decade flew by, that feeling was not tied to the total number of memories they could recall, nor to how vivid or positive those memories were. Instead, the sensation of a shrinking decade was closely linked to a decline in the ability to create and hold on to distinct new information. 2 people might both recall 10 memorable events from the year. But for a younger person, those 10 events are 10 clearly encoded chapters. For an older adult, those 10 events might just be 10 bright spots floating on a blurry, unstructured background of time. Time compresses not because we forget too much, but because right from the start, new experiences aren't being packaged by the brain into distinct, unique patterns. And evidence number 5. Repetition is the ultimate time compressor. The first time you drive a new route to work, your brain is on high alert, analyzing every turn, every sign, and every lane line. But after a few years of driving that exact same route, you can arrive at the office with almost 0 memory of the trip. This is a brilliant evolutionary optimization. If your brain recorded every single teeth-brushing session or every daily commute as a brand new memory, it would quickly crash from data overload. But the price of that efficiency is steep. When hundreds of your workdays have the exact same structure, your memory won't save each one individually. It lumps them all together and represents them with a single generic file. The years I worked at that job. Your brain doesn't necessarily delete identical days. It simply refuses to save them as separate stories. Routine is repetition, and repetition is incredibly easy to compress. And here is the ultimate cognitive twist. Wanting time to slow down in the present and wanting life to feel longer in retrospect are actually opposite goals. If you want an afternoon to feel endless right now, it is easy. Sit in a waiting room, stare at the clock, do nothing, and count the minutes. But that empty afternoon will instantly evaporate from your memory by tomorrow. If you want a week to feel incredibly long and full of life, when you look back on it, you have to change your environment, meet new people, learn a strange skill, and create clear beginnings and endings. But while you are busy living those days, you won't have time to look at the clock, and the week will fly by at the speed of light. So how exactly does our brain's compression chain reaction work? When a new day starts, your brain uses past experiences to predict what will happen. When you open your office door, you expect to see your familiar desk. The new information is instantly compared to that prediction. If today is exactly like yesterday, your brain doesn't waste energy updating. But if there is a surprise, a new project, or an old friend suddenly visiting, the prediction is broken. The brain is forced to update, stamping an event boundary. The previous story ended, and a new one has begun. When you look back on the year, your brain cannot rewind every second. It calculates the length of that year by counting the number of distinct retrievable events, the shifts in context, and the sharpness of those event boundaries. When your 365 days are perfectly identical, your brain only extracts 40 distinct event samples, making the entire year feel incredibly short. But when life is full of changes, a 14-day vacation might be stamped with 80 separate mental scenes, making that short trip feel like it lasted a whole month. When we feel life accelerating, it is easy to panic and think our brains are broken. But the truth is, time compression is proof that you have become an expert at navigating your own life. Just like a beginner driver has to memorize every single brake tap, an experienced driver only has to remember one goal: drive home. If every familiar action in your life demanded the intense focus and novelty of doing it for the first time, your brain would burn out. The price of mastery and adulthood is that many experiences no longer need to be saved in high definition. Your life isn't thinning out because you are living less. It is thinning out because your brain has learned how to fold familiar things together. But that also serves as a warning. A year where you are drowning in busy work is not necessarily a year you will remember. You can cross off thousands of items on a to-do list, but without a single shift in routine, your memory will have no reason to divide that year into distinct chapters. So how can we make a year longer in our memory? We don't have the power to slow down the hands of a clock. But we absolutely have the power to increase the number of markers our memory uses to reconstruct the year. You don't have to drop everything to travel the world or seek extreme thrills. Tiny changes can create powerful event boundaries. Try learning a new skill with clear stages of progress. Take a completely different route to work every Friday. Dive into a personal project with a hard start and end date. Or simply give your undivided attention to a conversation in a brand new setting. At the end of every week, ask yourself, what made this week different from the last? The goal isn't to force every minute to be a special event. The goal is to stop letting an entire season of your life get tossed into a mental box labeled business as usual. Time doesn't actually run any faster as you get older. Your memory has simply mastered the art of folding hundreds of identical days into a single crease, and life suddenly thins out, exactly in the places where you stopped leaving markers. If you want a year to last longer in your memory, don't try to hold on to every single minute. Be brave enough to create the moments that force your brain to say, from here, a new story begins.